Hey guys, GWS here. Here for what'll hopefully be a short video, which probably means it'll be 30 minutes long. Um, but look at this story. Here's a neat little story to find, and this is an example of arguments that libertarian-minded people make. Cancer patient given just 3 months to live is cured by experimental treatment. Now, um, to understand how this is important to the libertarian versus statist argument, one has to understand how the FDA process goes. The FDA process, I'm not sure exactly the lengths of time. I'm no FDA expert, but the way it goes is, you have an ID, you have some sort of idea, and then you have to present it to the FDA as proof of concept, and then you do your double-blind trials, all that. You go through all these trials, and these trials, by the way, have limited participation, just a handful of people just to see if the potential type of treatment works. And this goes on for years and years. And then you have all the case studies. And then after finally years and years and years, stuff gets off of the market. It can be shipped to the market. And so what you have is an FDA process that takes years before stuff that's cutting edge gets to the public. And of course, this is where you have your huge corporations that are profiting off of stuff slow in the pipeline because these experimental treatment, like it gives them time to buy up the ideas and patent them and all that. But anyhow, that's neither here nor there. Because that policy has been at least um, greatly reduced in terms of time by Trump, who is now allowing experimental treatments, not just in trials, but by the general public if they so choose. And this is the way it should be handled and always should have been handled. As long as people are acutely aware that the potential treatment that they're going to undergo is an experimental treatment, and are aware of the extreme risks of not just potential fatalities, but a great potential for massive pain and suffering due to either the treatment itself or complications, unforeseen side effects, and all that, as well as after treatment impacts. Because like when you're doing an experimental treatment, like you don't have the case studies to back it up. So you can have huge long term impacts. But see, that's why you can have something where you are informing people of the risks, but allowing them to make their own judgments, their own value judgments. Because at the end of the day, like you can back up something through some sort of scientific risk analysis, but that has nothing to do with somebody's individual life. People value something very highly or very lowly. Um, it's an individual value. Like if you want to take the extremely high risk, um, regardless of your chances of surviving the ordeal, it's something people at least need the right to decide for themselves. Whether or not you can clearly demonstrate that their decision making process is wrong, the fact is people have the right to judge for themselves and, yes, even make incorrect judgments. So whether or not you believe that X person's making the right decision by trying this experimental treatment, um, instead of going through years of this exhaustive chemotherapy and all the other traditional treatments um, for terminal cancer, or just tell them, like stay in hospice until you're dead, give them some drugs so they won't feel the pain of death. Um, I think people should have the right to decide, like, we're going to take that 2% chance that this kind of thing will happen. And so basically, this was like there's a certain type of white blood cell that certain people, not everybody, produces, where, um, like, if you extract it from the body and you grow the cells in a lab, you culture them, and then you infuse the person back with massive, ginormous numbers of these white blood cells, these cancer specific white blood cells that fight cancers, um, that even somebody who's terminal could potentially have their cancer reversed because um, these cells will eat away at the genetically flawed reproductive material, and it can result in a cure. But it's like experimental treatments like this. It's like this has probably been in the pipeline for 5 to 10 years, but because of the FDA process, we gotta wait. And that's the beauty of Trump, is that Trump is absolutely, he's not just using some kind of incrementalist model of gradual change. Trump is going all the way, all at once with everything. And it's like the more he does domestically, I don't really agree with his foreign policy, but domestically he has done so much for this country in the short amount of time that, like, what other president would have done this? Given Trump's flaws, and he does have a lot of flaws, he even has some domestic flaws, like I think he goes overboard with patriotism stuff, but it's like the stuff he's doing is so monumental. No other president would have done that. Like, other presidents probably would have done the same foreign policy, they would have done the same patriotic things, they would have taken stands against the kneeling for the national anthem. It's like, there's a lot of stuff that Trump has done that's wrong, and while it's wrong, a lot of other presidents would do it. But it's like you take away Trump, you put Mitt Romney, you put Jeb Bush, you put Rubio or Ted Cruz. How much of this would they have gotten done? The only potential thing is you could have said is maybe they would have gotten something better done out of Obamacare, but even Trump just flat out strong manning the mandate, turning Obama's executive power against him. But the point is this, is that what Trump has done with these experimental treatments is amazing, and this isn't necessarily a specific example of that, because this treatment was started years ago in a trial. Again, there's a lot of people who probably could have been cured if this were public at the time. So what you're going to start to see, you'll see a lot sensationalized by the media, such as experimental treatment goes horribly wrong, X person dies in gruesome, agonizing death. But a lot of the media outlets won't report stuff like this. And I mean, you have stuff like New York Post, which is very, very good. It leans to the right, but New York Post is pretty balanced, and it has a lot of relative neutrality. Although there is a framing right wing bias, just like there's a framing left wing bias, but don't need to go into that. But the point is that we now have a lot more power under Trump to decide for ourselves what is worth it and what is not worth it, and to allow our values, not the state's values, but our values, to dictate the type of treatments we seek, extreme or not. And it's not perfect, because a lot of the FDA process is still in place. Stuff's still going to take time. But people at least have a way, desperate people at least have a way of circumventing the FDA and going directly to these specific treatments. Anyhow, that's the video. Hopefully, I'll have more soon. Thanks for listening, guys, and God bless.